It's like you're not welcome here. You should leave. My brother's harsh words cut deep, but what hurt more was my sister-in-law's quiet satisfaction as she sat beside me, squinting her eyes and smirking at my stunned reaction. I turned to our mother, hoping for some support, but she just sighed and said, "Living with your brother and his wife, who went to prestigious schools and work at top companies, seems better than being with you, Linda. You just stay home all the time." Her tone calm but the sting undeniable. None of them, my mother, my brother, or my sister-in-law, seemed to acknowledge how much I had contributed financially and sacrificed for our family. Swallowing the pain, I calmly said, "Fine, I'll leave, but don't expect any help from me again," and began packing my things. As I gathered my belongings, my sister-in-law sneered, "Giving up so easily, Linda? You never know who will struggle more down the road." Her words, dripping with sarcasm, echoed in my mind, but I knew engaging would only create more conflict. My name is Linda, and I've been incredibly successful with my online businesses. My path here wasn't straightforward. During my university days, I imagined myself landing a regular job at a company, just like everyone else, but everything changed in my second year when my dad fell ill. He needed constant care, and though we hired caregivers, they couldn't be there all the time. My mom, never one for domestic work, would often neglect his needs, telling him to wait. That's when I stepped in. Witnessing this made me anxious about the future. I started to question how my dad would be cared for once I began working. I couldn't rely on my mom, so I explored options that would allow me to work from home. With my background in economics, I dove into studying online businesses, gathering a group of friends with management and tech skills to help me launch our own project. We eventually opened a small office where our team could work, especially those who struggled with focus at home or new hires needing training. However, I rarely went there. My real office was my home, where I could stay close to my dad while managing the business. One day, my dad, sensing the weight of my responsibilities, asked me if I had sacrificed a career for his sake or if I simply couldn't find a job after graduation. It hit me hard, but I assured him that I had been running a thriving online business since university. I could manage everything from home without any issues. Hearing this, my dad smiled proudly and thanked me for everything I had done, telling me I had become a responsible adult, which meant the world to me. I wasn't the only child in the family, though. My older brother, Tom, is 2 years older and always excelled academically. After graduating from a prestigious university, he landed a high-paying job at a top firm. While we were happy for him, Tom's response was unexpected. He made it clear that he was starting a new life in the city and didn't intend to return home. He abruptly cut off communication, ignoring our calls and messages. Even though our father had supported him through college, Tom seemed completely ungrateful and distanced himself from the family. Dad and I were both hurt by his actions. We suspected our mom might have been secretly talking to him, but even as Dad's health worsened, Tom remained absent. Then, out of the blue, we received news from Mom. Tom had called. He was getting married and asked for a wedding gift, but not just any gift. He wanted $999,000. Mom looked worried as she relayed this to us, aware of the strain this request would put on our finances. Dad's initial calm quickly turned into anger. "Why should we give him that kind of money when he hasn't even bothered to speak to us in years?" he said, his voice rising. Mom, visibly upset, glanced at me for backup. She explained, "But he's starting a family. I want him to have a good life and maybe give us grandchildren. Isn't that what every parent hopes for?" she said softly. It was a painful moment for me. I had given up a traditional job path because of my mother's needs, only to hear her prioritize my brother in such a way. Dad, equally frustrated, snapped, "Linda has been here, taking care of me because you couldn't. I supported Tom through everything, and he's never once thanked me. How can you ask for something so outrageous?" That night, their argument echoed through the house. I listened from the other room, worried about Dad's health. Mom had always favored Tom, showering him with praise, but her disregard for what I had done for the family weighed heavily on me. When Mom left for dinner with friends, Dad turned to me, saying, "Linda, thank you for always being here for me." "It's okay, Dad. I've known for a long time that Mom favors Tom. I've accepted it. I've asked so much of you, and I wish I could do more for you." "Dad, you've done more than enough. You've supported me through school and life. I wouldn't be where I am without you. If it weren't for my father, I might never have embarked on my online business journey." His smile was a source of comfort for me, yet I couldn't fathom why my mother, who had such a loving father, displayed such selfishness. The sudden request for a substantial wedding gift from my brother, who had cut off communication with us for years, was hard to digest. However, the most shocking moment arrived shortly after. One morning, I discovered my father unresponsive. I quickly called for an ambulance, but it was too late, he had already passed. The turnout at his funeral was significant, reflecting the strong connections he had made throughout his life. Typically, the funeral arrangements would fall to the spouse, but my mother claimed she was too preoccupied and left the task entirely to me. She seemed more engrossed in her phone than in mourning Dad's death. Anger and a sense of abandonment surged within me, but I focused on organizing the funeral to honor my father's memory. Then, an unexpected event unfolded. My brother arrived at the funeral with a woman wearing an extravagant dress. His casual attire was entirely inappropriate for such a solemn occasion. The atmosphere shifted as shock rippled through the crowd, yet Mom welcomed him with a grin. "I'm glad to see you, Tom. Now we can claim your father's inheritance," she declared boldly. Her statement altered the mood in the room, leaving everyone stunned and bewildered. "Honestly, I don't think Linda should anticipate any inheritance. She's just been sitting at home, taking care of Dad," Tom remarked loudly, laced with sarcasm. I was taken aback and let out a deep sigh. He must have been aware of our family's dynamics and Dad's declining health through Mom. Yet, she conveniently ignored the fact that I had significantly contributed to our family's well-being. As for the inheritance, who cared? Dad had a respectable job, but making such comments at a funeral was deeply disrespectful. The funeral was steeped in an unsettling gloom. "Should we leave now, Tom? We'll end up with the inheritance regardless," Mom said, tugging at his arm. The moment I spotted the woman accompanying my brother, I recognized her as his wife. She mirrored Tom's demeanor, leading me to assume she must possess a similar personality to have married him. I wished for their prompt departure. Surprisingly, even Mom seemed to align with them. "Shall we grab some sushi?" she suggested, and the three of them walked out together. Other relatives expressed their astonishment, some voicing their disbelief, but I urged, "Let's maintain our composure, for Dad's sake." I kept my annoyance to myself and continued with the proceedings. Upon returning home, I was greeted by a cluttered dining table adorned with 3 boxes of sushi, likely a delivery. From the living room, I heard laughter and chatter. Mom, Tom, and his wife, Jessica, were reveling in the moment with drinks in hand. "Hey, you're late, Linda. Can you whip up some snacks and grab more drinks?" my brother demanded. I was appalled by their insensitivity, especially following Dad's funeral. It was as if they were completely oblivious to the inappropriateness of their behavior, despite the astonished expressions of other family members. Mom, who should have intervened, was instead laughing along with them, affirming my choice to distance myself from them. I couldn't help but wonder if they would have even bothered to hold a proper funeral had I not taken charge. I decided to confront them. "There's no inheritance for you." I refused to fetch any more drinks or snacks for them. Tom, now intoxicated, reacted angrily. "What do you mean, Linda? You've always been at home, causing trouble for Dad. It's only fair we use his assets," he retorted. Given that Tom had relied on Dad for all his educational expenses, I found it bewildering that he felt entitled to Dad's possessions. It infuriated me to see him act as if he owed nothing to our father. "Isn't this house Dad's?" Tom continued. "As the eldest son, it should be mine. Why should Linda, who does nothing all day, live here?" Mom and Tom appeared to share the same mindset. The affection Mom once showed me seemed to have vanished. "This house is mine," Tom asserted. "I want Linda out." His wife appeared unfazed by the situation. Mom then chimed in. "I feel more at ease living with my son and his wife, who have achieved success, than with you, Linda." They failed to recognize the significant contributions I had made to the household. A wave of sadness and disappointment washed over me. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to speak my truth. "I'll leave. Please don't expect anything from me again." As I gathered my belongings in my room, I overheard my sister-in-law mocking me. "She's really poor, don't you think?" Their laughter echoed, but I merely forced a bitter smile. Yes, I might currently seem the most wretched, but they were unaware of a crucial detail. Legally, this house had belonged to me since Dad was alive. He had entrusted it to me, even though Mom still resided here and might claim she had spent most of her life within these walls. Legally, it was mine. However, witnessing her cold demeanor at Dad's funeral compelled me to reconsider my ownership of the house. I grew weary of our relationship and viewed her presence as a burden. Living alone in this expansive home would be lonely, and maintaining it would be challenging. Consequently, I resolved to sell it. Observing Mom and my brother's family enjoying their lives, blissfully ignorant of my decision, filled me with pity. Their expectation of an inheritance from dad seemed absurd to me. Before mom's health deteriorated, she enjoyed a steady income, but as her health declined, she could no longer hold a job, so she started using her savings to employ someone for daily assistance. Her funds were gradually spent on routine expenses, and even when dad fell ill and required more care, mom continued her usual spending habits, which depleted her savings. Once I discovered that dad's financial reserves had vanished, I began contributing $3,000 monthly to help with household costs. Although mom managed the household chores, she struggled with financial management. During her shopping trips, she often made impulsive purchases of expensive items, regardless of whether we needed them. She ignored sales and budgeting, using the income from her part-time job for her hobbies and entertainment. Additionally, she took more money than necessary for everyday expenses to indulge herself. Dad felt guilty about the situation. Ultimately, it was mom who consumed the savings he had worked hard to accumulate. As I prepared to leave the home, I withdrew all the funds I had been contributing for household expenses. I couldn't stand the thought of my mom continuing to misuse the money. The next day brought an unexpected turn of events. "Did you take the household funds, Linda?" Mom's voice came through the phone one quiet morning, sounding a mix of surprise and annoyance. "What household funds, Mom? Dad's savings? Those are long gone, as you should know. Have you forgotten that you spent them all? I left the ledger on the table that shows how you kept withdrawing from Dad's savings. He was aware of it too. After his savings were exhausted, I was the one who provided $3,000 each month to keep the household running." I could hear Mom moving about, likely searching for the ledger I mentioned. Then I heard the door to the living room swing open. "Mom, what's happening? Wasn't there supposed to be an inheritance after Dad passed away? Did you spend it all?" My brother sounded angry and disillusioned, with his wife's voice echoing in the background. "I can't believe this. Mom, did you really expect us to come home to support you financially? That's pretty harsh." "No, that's not what I meant." It was evident that Mom had called them back due to the inheritance. At that moment, I understood they wouldn't trust her anymore. "We left our secure jobs to come here, thinking we'd receive Dad's inheritance. How are we supposed to make a living now?" "What, Tom? I had no idea you made such a significant decision." "This is news to me too." My brother had previously held a good position, but I wasn't particularly bothered by their choice, as it didn't directly affect me. "And what about the $2,700 you've been receiving every month?" my brother pressed. "Mom, you kept insisting that Linda wasn't working, right?" Mom turned to me with shock and guilt written across her face. "What, Linda? What's happening?" she asked. I gave a slight smile and said, "You should consider looking into remote work these days. You can find a job without leaving the house." I had never disclosed my thriving online business to them. I knew if they found out, they would start depending on me, and even worse, they might meddle in my business affairs. "Please come back. Let's be a family again." Mom's voice was barely audible, as if she hadn't placed the blame on me at all, but I had no intention of returning. "Mom, you just want to rely on my financial support, right? And regarding the house, while Dad was alive, I took over the ownership due to the property taxes. It's mine now. I don't intend to live there anymore, so I've asked my uncle, who runs a real estate agency, to sell it." He was furious about what occurred at Dad's funeral, so if my brother and his family continue living there, he'll evict them. Losing our home was something I never envisioned. Mom sounded stunned, and I could hear my brother's voice in the background asking, "What's going on?" Feeling too overwhelmed to answer, I decided to leave everything to my uncle. He had assured me he would manage things and explain everything to Mom and my brother's family, so I trusted him. "Goodbye. I'm severing ties with you and Mom. I won't be using this phone anymore. Farewell." With that, I ended the call. I pictured their astonishment and felt a brief wave of sadness. Finding me would be challenging for them. I had plans to relocate abroad, a dream I had never shared, not even with Dad. I had always envisioned living in a warm, tropical country with a vibrant culture. When Mom and my brother's family asked me to vacate the house after Dad's passing, I recognized it as the perfect opportunity to fulfill my dream. After being asked to leave the house, I quickly began packing and searching for a new place overseas. I wanted somewhere serene, near the beach, so I concentrated on finding the ideal location. I'm currently residing alone in a short-term rental apartment close to the city center with excellent transport links, which is perfect as I prepare for my move abroad. With my brother, his wife, and Mom preoccupied with finding a new home after the eviction, they likely haven't had time to consider me. By the time I heard they were cramped in a small apartment, juggling part-time jobs to make ends meet. I was already settling into my new life abroad. My uncle hired a detective agency to discreetly keep an eye on them. They discovered that my family was struggling financially, still living beyond their means, and even borrowing from predatory lenders. If their situation continues, they could face even more challenges with debt collectors. I've cut ties with them and stayed out of their affairs. It's unlikely I'll ever see them again after everything that has transpired. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay amazed.